Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om Jnana Timarandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Pamantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Prajna Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So reading from Srimad Gita Upanishad, translation and commentary, Srila Prabhupada. Chapter 5, Karma Sannyas Yoga, text number 10. Please repeat. Brahmani Adhaya Karmani Sangam Taktva Karoti Yah Lipyate Na Sa Papena Padmapatram Imam Bhasa Brahmane Adaya Karmani Sangam Taktva Karotiya Lipyate Nasa Papena Padma Patram Iva Vasha Brahmane Adaya Karmani Sangam Taktva Karotiya Lipyate Nasa Papena Padma Patram Imam Vasa Brahmane Adaya Karmani Sangam Taktva Karotiya Lipyate Nasa Papena Padma Patram Imam Vasa. Okay. Brahmani Adaya Karmani Sangam Taktva Karotiya Lipyate Nasa Papena Padra Patram Ivam Vasha Brahmani Adaya Karmani Sangam Taktva Karotiya Lipyate Nasa Papena Padma Patram Ivam Vasha. Please repeat word for word. Brahmani, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Adhaya, resigning. Karmani, all works. Sangam, attachment. Taktva, giving up. Karoti, performs. Yaha, who, lipyate, is affected. Na, never. Saha, he, papena, by sin, padmapatra, a lotus leaf, iha, like, ambasha, by the water. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the works unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Please repeat. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful reaction, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Purport Srila Prabhupada. Here Brahmani means in Krishna consciousness. The material world is a sum total manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically called pradhan. The Vedic hymn Sarvam Etad Brahma, Mukunda Upanishad 2, Tasmat Etad Brahma Nama Rupam Anam Jayate, Mukunda Upanishad 1-10, and in Bhagavad Gita 14.3, Mama Yonir Mahat Brahma, indicate that everything in the material world is a manifestation of Brahman. And although the effects are differently manifested, they are non-different from the cause. In the Ishopanishad, it is said that everything is related to the Supreme Brahman, or Krishna, and thus everything belongs to him only. One who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that therefore everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. Even one's material body, being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is then beyond contamination by sinful reactions, exactly as the lotus leaf, though remaining in the water, is not wet. The Lord also says in the Gita 3:30, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya, resign all works unto me, Krishna. The conclusion is that a person without Krishna consciousness acts according to the conception of the material body and senses, but a person in Krishna consciousness acts according to the knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna and should therefore be engaged in the service of Krishna. Mukkam karoti vachalam pangarnaite giridyev kripatamam bandaishi gurum dinadarinam. Brahmani adhaya karmani sanga taktva karoti yaha lipyate nasa papena padmapatram ivam vasha. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So, here, Kama Sannyas Yoga, 5th chapter, there is a big, in this verse and the next 10-15, to the end of the chapter actually, there's a lot of discussion about the position of the devotee who is performing this Kama Sannyas Yoga, who is offering all the results to the Supreme Lord. So in this particular verse, Krishna makes the point that he's not affected, he's unaffected by sinful reaction. You see the Sanskrit Brahmani, Supreme Lord, Adaya Karmani, all work sangam taktva, giving up, karoti yaha, he who does this, lipyate na sapapena, lipyate, he's not affected by pap. Padma patram ivam basha, just like a lotus leaf. A lotus leaf floats on the water, but it has a special quality, right? Everyone has seen a lotus leaf. You put a drop of water on it, it will just run off completely. It remains dry. So Krishna is using that as an example, that we're in the material world, we have the material body. Now normally, for the materially conditioned people who are full of material desire and acting accordingly, they get their papa and punya, they get their reaction accordingly. But the devotee who surrenders everything to Krishna, adaya karmani, in this mentality, brahmani adaya karmani, he's free of that. So again it comes down to a matter of consciousness. So this is particularly interesting, because if you remember at the beginning of the Gita, what did Arjuna say to Krishna? He said, if I fight in this battle, I'll be overcome by sin. I have to kill Bhishma, he's a great sage, a great stalwart. I have to kill Dronacharya, he's my guru. And on this side also, so many people will be put to death in the battle. And because I'm doing it, I'm part of it, then I'm responsible. So I'll get pap. So of course we've discussed this before. That is the nature of the Aryan, the intelligent person. Parvitrim cha, nivritim cha. They always think what should be done and what should not be done. When they're faced with some decision, then they consider which will elevate me or which will degrade me. Let me avoid that one. So Arjuna is Aryan, advanced in consciousness. So he's considering. But Krishna doesn't accept his argument, actually, for various reasons. The first one is, okay, Bhishma is a great stalwart, great sage, no doubt, one of the 8 Vasus, and Dronacharya, and there's so many learned, but they're fighting on the side of Duryodhana. So you may be a great sage, but if you're fighting on the wrong side for the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, then what is your position? Right? I might be a great sage, but if I work for a great Gunda, my position is very poor. So, and yes, Duryodhana, he was a terrible fellow. Under Dhritarashtra, they were always trying to kill the Pandavas, poison cave, the house of lac, so many things they tried to kill the Pandavas, one after the other. Plus, the real thing is that Krishna wanted Yudhisthira to be on the throne. And it was his throne by right, by birth and by qualification. Duryodhana was a Sura. It's explained in the Shastra, he is the expansion of the personality of Kali. If you remember the Krishna book, 10th canto, Lord Brahma and the demigods, they go to the shore of the Kshirodakshayi ocean, and they entreat Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, because on earth it's covered by demoniac Kshatriyas. They're actually not qualified. So what is that qualification? Kshatriya is the governmental function. They were using their government position for their own self-aggrandizement. Right? it says there in the Krishna book, Bhagavatam, that the world was overburdened by demoniac forces. So that is the tendency of these demoniac government people. When they get the power, their first job is to build a big army, super weapons, stealth bombers, billions and billions of dollars on nowadays nuclear radiation and smart bombs and God knows what. And they neglect the welfare of the people. Right? Certain countries in the world are spending billions of dollars on some stealth bomber, but in the street the people are dying. They have no work. They can't afford to repair their own teeth. They can't afford good medicine. They can't afford to go to the hospital if they have a problem. But the country has spent billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on nuclear weapons. Why? Because these demoniac so-called Kshatriyas, when they have a big powerful army, then they self-aggrandizement. I'm the most powerful Turkey on the planet. They think like that. Whereas the devotee ruler is taking care of the material and spiritual benefit. And he doesn't feel paranoid that I need a big army to protect myself. Right? In Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna was walking in Dwarka, in the street. He's not hiding in a bomb-proof limousine. No, but everyone is so happy throwing flowers at Krishna. And why? Because the Kshatriya, the ruler, the king, is like a father to the children, the praja. So if the praja, the people of a nation or country, they feel protected by their ruler, they naturally love, just like children, they naturally love their parents. But these demoniac rulers, nowadays, almost everywhere in the world, of course it's Kali Yuga, if you're a leader, you have to travel with thousands of people to protect you. Of course. And that is sign of a very discordant civilization. The people are full of criminals, ready to kill the president is not loved, so on and so forth. But that should not be the condition. So the Kshatriya, the devotee Kshatriya, he takes care of the people materially and spiritually. He educates them. He tries to make sure that they're progressing spiritually, that they have all facility. And naturally, the world, the earth planet provides all that. There is no lack. But when the demoniac become in charge, the demoniac, their main thing is to be big controller. Expand the empire, control the mind of the people, get more money and build more bombs, and sit and get awards, and so on and so forth. So, by birth also, Yudhisthira, and by qualification, was and should be on the throne. Duryodhana had usurped it. So when Arjuna said, I'll be overcome by sin, because actually you'll be overcome by sin, Arjuna, Krishna explained, if you don't perform your duty. Because you'll be responsible for this unqualified person sitting on the king's throne. So Krishna didn't accept that material argument, but the real point is that, as Krishna explains step by step, that this is my plan. And I want you to stay on the throne, and therefore you as a Kshatriya can help. You should help your brother. This is the direction of the Supreme Lord. But you should not do it for your own personal self-aggrandizement, which is the demoniac way, but you should do it in the service to Brahmani in this verse. Brahmani adaya karmani. Surrendering all your works to the Supreme. And then punya, these material reactions don't liputate, nasa, liputate, they don't catch hold of you. So Krishna here is answering that argument of Arjuna, satisfying him. But of course it applies to us. Because, yes, the material world works according to karma, law, and... Can you close these windows? Cause and effect. This one also. So, the Aryan, or the person who's learned in Vedic philosophy, he's very concerned that I will not be overcome by reaction, because being overcome by reaction means I stay in the cycle of birth and death. And in that cycle, I get my pap and my punya, I get the result of my previous activities. And I'm in the cycle of birth, age, old age and disease. So the devotee knows, I want to get free of this condition. So there is no political solution to birth, death, old age and disease. There'll not be a political system ever invented whereby you can avoid old age. Right? Oh, in this kingdom nobody grows old because they have international globalism. Oh, and in this kingdom nobody gets disease. No, these things are part and parcel of life in the material world. So a devotee wants to transcend material existence, and he wants to transcend the material energy completely and become the associate of Krishna eternally. So, interesting point here is, yogic point actually, we have to view this verse in terms of the two previous verses, and then we'll understand what Prabhupada says in the purport. In Prabhupada's purport, this is based on the first part of Baladevi Vibhushan's purport to the same sloka. So if we look in the previous two verses, a person in divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing. So there Krishna is explaining, although using his karmendriyas, what are the karmendriyas? They're the working senses. That means the voice, the arms, the belly, digestion, the genital, and the legs. These are karmendriyas. They're the working senses. So look, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling. So that is reference to the Gyan Endriyas. The Gyan Endriya is knowledge, Gyan in knowledge, Endriya, senses. It means senses for getting knowledge of your circumstances. So the karmendriyas are hearing, touch, sight, taste and smell. So a person in divine consciousness engaged in hearing in his kamendriyas and his jnanendriyas, he knows, that means he perceives from his Krishna conscious provision that he's doing nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening, closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof. So this verse, these two verses, they lead up to today's verse. Because when Brahmani Adaya Karmani, what the devotee does, it means that the actions of the kamendriyas and the jnanendriyas, he offers them to, as Prabhupada quoted in the purport, 3 verses, but we'll say the one 14.3. Mama yonir mahad brahma. Everything is a manifestation. Mahad yonir. Mama, the material energy is the womb. I am the womb from which the material energy manifests. So, as Prabhupada said there, that this material energy, it's a manifestation from the Supreme, and therefore it's not different from the Supreme. So, when we have the material body, Krishna is pointing out here, this is how we become aloof from the senses. That we offer, for example, when we're hearing, we're using the jnanendriya. So we offer the action of that jnanendriya into sound, which is a material element but is ultimately spiritual. Mama yonir brahma. And say, for example, we might be smelling a rose, but we're using the smelling sense, jnanendriya, and we are offering that into the scent, the sense object, which is material, but ultimately spiritual. So when it says, at the beginning of today's verse, Brahmani Adaya Sarvakarmani, it means that giving up all these working senses and knowledge acquiring senses, their action we offer to the material energy, which is Krishna. So therefore the devotee, or in this form of yogic practice, if you remember earlier in the 4th chapter, Krishna explains different yagyas. So he explains some people offer the action of the breathing into breath. So this is a reference to that the action of the smelling sense is offered into scent. The offer of the action of the taste sense is offered into the object of taste. And those objects are seen as Mama Yoni Brahma, that it is the Supreme Lord, the source of the material energy. So therefore, the devotee in this mentality, he offers the actions of his body into the material energy, seeing that material energy as non-different from Krishna. Therefore, in the person in divine consciousness, also in today's sloka, is explained, and Prabhupada says in the beginning, in Krishna consciousness. So this is the actual Krishna conscious position, that the devotee, realized devotee, does not see material energy in the sense of a separate entity from the Supreme Lord. Rather, he sees everything in relationship to the Supreme Lord. And therefore, even while tasting, he realizes that this is the material sense, and he offers that into taste. He offers the action of his senses into Krishna in the form of the material energy which produces taste, which produces sound, which produces touch, which produces sight. So, of course, Prabhupada goes straight to the point in the translation. Surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, you see. One who performs his duty, that means his duty using his material body. In Arjuna's case, as a Kshatriya, without attachment, that meant without personal agenda, but as an offering to surrendering the result of his Kamendriya and Jnanendriya, his work, to the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So this is very important yogic point, because as in the previous verse he knows that he is aloof. So, of course, in one of the basic procedures in yogic meditation is to first, and we're discussing here elements of Ashtanga Yoga in this verse, is to observe the actions of the consciousness. For example, pratyahara, it means to withdraw the focus of the consciousness from the senses. How is that actually done? You may have heard Krishna explaining that you should just observe the actions of the mind. Normally people, through false ego, ahankara, consider that these thoughts, these desires are mine. And they enter into them, they identify with them, and manoratena, they get carried into the material world, action and reaction, by identification. So in the Ashtanga Yoga, Raja Yoga process, the meditator is directed to sit properly, asana, do pranayama, withdraw the senses from the objects. Then observe the mind, but then to become aloof from the mind, in the sense, in the mind there will be so many thoughts, but one should withdraw identification with the thoughts and see oneself as consciousness, and then fix that consciousness on the Supreme Lord. So it's step by step. It's very simple. You withdraw your consciousness from the material energy and you focus your consciousness on the Supreme Lord. So that is Sankhya Yoga. Because at the beginning of this chapter, Krishna says, Arjuna asks, you're talking about analytical knowledge and renunciation of work, from which is the Sankhya Yoga system. In Sankhya Yoga, there's categorization of all the material elements. Earth, water, fire, ether, Kamendriyas, Jnanendriyas, mind, intelligence, consciousness, Supreme Lord, individual soul, ahankara. But the aim of that Sankhya Yoga is to see that you are not these material elements, but you are the soul, and you should focus on the Supreme Soul. Now in the material problem, you're focusing your attention on the material elements, and you're becoming entangled in that way. But divine consciousness, Krishna consciousness, means that the soul is focused on the Supreme Lord within the heart. So this verse is talking about that. Okay, you've still got your material body, but be aloof by understanding that the working senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, are just engaged in the objects. So that means have the philosophical understanding that I am not the body. It's like the beginning and end almost of spiritual life. So if I'm not the body, what am I? I'm consciousness. And when my consciousness should be fixed on the Supreme, Manmana. So that is the perfection of all yoga. Yoga means union or plus or yoking. So when the individual consciousness is fixed on the Supreme, that is Yoga Siddhi. So the goal of all yoga practice is to fix this consciousness and flow the consciousness 24 hours a day at Krishna's lotus feet. So what's described here in these three verses we just discussed is a way to become detached from this material entanglement. Because these working senses, these knowledge acquiring senses, they're naturally attracted. The eyes want to see something beautiful. The tongue wants to taste something delicious. The working senses, the arms, they want to play basketball, or they want to play cricket. They want to have some enjoyable thing. They don't want to dig the road. So we're all searching. The senses, naturally, they have a magnetic effect. So how to stop that being pulled in? That is by knowledge. If you remember, Krishna says, learn the truth from the spiritual master, and when you have spiritual knowledge, you'll be liberated. So by this knowledge, that I am not the material senses, I am not the body, then we start to become aloof. Now of course the material body is still carrying on, and we're still using the material body. But with the consciousness fixed in devotion to the Supreme, our activities become devotional on all levels. Not just spiritual, but all in the material senses become spiritualized. And Prabhupada gave the example, just like an iron rod. You put in the fire and it becomes like fire. So the material body, used in this manner, in the service of Krishna, becomes spiritualized. So in this section, like we say, is the way to become aloof. Okay, I've got this body, I'm working for Krishna, I'm taking prasad, but this is external to me. And my focus should be on touching the Supreme. So that is the job of the spiritual master, to give the way to the disciple how he can actually touch the spiritual energy. Because just in the same way that we can touch different objects, so similarly, the soul is designed to have a magnetic attraction, if you like, to Krishna. And in this way, touch Krishna. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadakavanai Shravanadi Sudachitte Kalidevada. The Krishna Prem is within the heart. So it is natural that it has the object of Krishna. So it's distracting. Can you get them to turn down this lecture? So in Krishna consciousness, this is the actual condition of the soul. Now, from our point of view, of course you're devotees, but we may not have a very good perception of spirit. Just in the same way that I touch this table, but I may not have the same grasp, perception of the transcendental energy. So sadhana bhakti is a way to take the consciousness and fix it on the Supreme, so that Krishna and the spiritual energy is realized, in fact, even more as reality than the material energy. The unfortunate condition of Maya Shakti is it makes us forget, it cuts us off from the Supreme Lord. So sadhana bhakti, we should always remember that. The goal is to get in touch with Krishna, who is there factually. So Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita, Vedas, is not just philosophy, it is practical instructions how you can touch spirit. That is called Abhideya Jnana, the knowledge of devotional practices. In Kali Yuga, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Parasavanam, Archanam, Ranganam, Dasyam. These are all ways given by the spiritual master so that the sadhaka can touch spirit practically. And of course, Shravanam, Kirtanam is the most important. They're the beginning. Hearing the philosophy. Hearing, I'm not this material body. I'm not the Kamendriyas. I'm not the Jnanendriyas. They're engaged with the material energy. I'm aloof from that. So I let the material body and senses do their natural activities, but my focus is remembering Krishna. And how to awaken that remembrance? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That Krishna prema is in the heart. So when we chant and we avoid bad association, then that attachment to Krishna wakens up. And that is real Jaiva Dharma. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. In this section, he's giving him an idea how you can actually be less entangled. There's an interesting, I was reading Bhanuswami's translation of Baladev Vijayabhushan's purport on the sloka. And he ends his purport, we're very interested. Yeah, he ends his discussion by saying, yes, we still have the sense of doer, that I am, like here Krishna is telling Arjuna, you're performing these activities, but don't see yourself as the doer. They're being carried out by material nature. So we are the doer in the sense by our desire. But actually the material body, the material senses is working under the supervision of the demigods and ultimately Paramatma. And in that way engaging in the material energy. So we have a sense of doer in the sense that we supply the sankalp, the desire, the free will. However, if we are situated in knowledge, we will see that my desire and the actual activity produced are two different things. That I'm desiring, to lift these cartels. But ultimately, so in that sense I'm the doer, the karta. But this is actually being done by the devatas and Paramatma. Because the soul is aloof from the material energy. So by the arrangement of the demigods under the Supreme Lord, everything is carrying on. So with this philosophical understanding, one can then be detached. Yes, he's desiring to walk to the temple. And everything is walking automatically. But the person of knowledge knows that this is not me, this material body. This is the vehicle. I'm just like in a motor car. I'm pressing the pedals and the steering wheel, but I'm not doing all the other things. The wheels, the gearbox. I'm just touching little bits. So we're involved in the material energy by desire. Krishna, the devatas, they are responding to our desire. But we, the soul, are aloof from the motor car. So once we have this philosophical understanding, then naturally tattva, like today in the verse there, sangam tattva, association, giving up, karoti yaha, he who gives up association on the basis of this knowledge. Vipite. So that person who is situated in knowledge, he becomes free of papena. So now this is very important, that earlier Krishna was emphasizing the importance of knowledge. So we should not just let that slide by. The better our understanding of Siddhanta, how the material body works, how the material energy works, the more aloof, the more detached we will be. If we have a very imprecise understanding, then our realization will be less. But the devotee in divine consciousness, as Krishna said previously, he sees that I am aloof. He actually sees. We, from the conditioned perspective, think, yes, that's a good idea, I think I understand it, but okay, now I want to eat some litchi, or I want chapati sabji, so I'm going to eat it. And immediately we forget that we're supposed to be aloof, or that the soul is aloof. We come out of the Bhagavad Gita class and we immediately, now we may be thinking, but out of the Bhagavad Gita class we suddenly think, yeah, I am the body, I'm hungry, I want to dance, I'm doing this. So then that philosophical aloofness returns to material consciousness. However, by practice, on the basis of knowledge, Shravanam Kirtanam, therefore Sambandha Gyan, then Avideya, if we have good understanding of Siddhanta, then our practice, we see that we are aloof, as Krishna says to Arjuna. Now Arjuna, you're not aloof from your material situation. You're thinking you have to kill Bhishma and Dronacharya and make this big battle, and you're very depressed and you're worried about Pap. But if you have this understanding, Arjuna, that in this battle you'll be firing arrows and doing this, but actually it's just the material energy. Do your duty through your desire, your sankalp, but relegate the result to the material energy, which is Krishna. Do you see the point? So do your duty, but leave the result on the battlefield as service to Krishna. And know that you are aloof. So that means turn your philosophical understanding, first get your philosophical understanding, but then through contemplation, through chanting, realize that position. Turn it to Vigyan, realization. And that is the goal of Sankhya Yoga. Right? We're talking about what is Sankhya Yoga. You analyze the material elements, but then you see that the soul and the super soul are separate. So, devotional service, Prabhupada says in one purport, so Arjuna is saying, you're saying Sankhya Yoga and then you're saying devotional at the beginning of this chapter, which is better? So Prabhupada puts it very brilliantly in one purport. He said Sankhya Yoga is to find the root of the tree. That means Krishna, the root of creation, spirit, the soul, and Krishna. But then bhakti means to water the root. Like this will be more developed in chapter 15, Yoga of the Supreme Person, where it is explained the creation of the material world is like a banyan tree. The roots are in spirit and they're producing the material creation. So that root is Krishna. So Sankhya Yoga is very good, very knowledgeable, and it's there in all the Bhagavatam, teachings of the Kapil Dev, 3rd canto, and here in Gita, of course, because it helps us to see that there's this distinction between the material elements and the root, Krishna. And then bhakti comes along on the basis of that understanding and says, okay, I belong to that root, I'm part and parcel of the root, now I will pour water on the root. You see the point? So in this section here, this is a basic idea of Sankhya Yoga. Understand, yes, you have the material senses working and knowledge acquiring, but you're not them. Let them carry on with the sense objects. But you, Arjuna, remain aloof. And that means dhira. Dhirastatra namuyate. So Krishna explains later, 2nd chapter, from that first conversation, that actually, Arjuna, if you understand that you're aloof from this body and the sense objects external, then even at the time of death, you will be undisturbed. So, this is an important point. If somebody thinks I'm the body, and then I say, oh, I don't like you, you're from Bengal, I'm from Orissa, then if you're identifying with the body, you become upset. You're adhira. But if you think, oh, never mind, he's a buffalo, I'm not the body, he's not the body either, then you're aloof, you're detached. So, aloof from the material energy is on the basis of knowledge. And then through bhakti sadhana, we directly perceive. So this is the point here. This section, this is what Krishna is getting across to Arjuna. Yes, you have this material body and you're worried about using it in a bad way. Very good. But according to yogic principles, if you are acting for the Supreme, Brahmani, in Krishna consciousness, sarva karmani, tattva, giving up, if you're doing everything for the Supreme, and you understand now that this is my material body, then you're not touched by material reaction. And that was Arjuna's big concern, right, at the beginning. Chapter 1. My God, I have got to engage in this great battle. Thousands and millions will die. And I'll go to hell for God knows how long. Huh? No, Arjuna. Understand you're aloof. And then act for the Supreme. And then Pap won't touch you. Just like the lotus leaf. Water comes on the lotus leaf, but comes off very easily. It doesn't stick. Namam kamani limpante, Krishna says. So these are some deeper philosophical points that might be flipped over easily. That's why acharyas have written purports. And if we become fixed in this knowledge, and we have this habit, oh yes, now I'm having lunch, but my tongue is engaged in tasting. My ears are engaged in hearing. And this is the material. This is the expression of the material body. But my real concern should be to use my spiritual consciousness to touch Krishna. And when we've realized Krishna, Janma Karma Tame Divyam, the spiritual directly, by training our consciousness to touch spirit through chanting and hearing, then we transfer to the spiritual world. So, as Rupa Goswami says, Seva Sadhaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena Chetrahi. Yes, you have a sadhaka body. You're doing all your services. But you also have a Siddha Rupena, perfection. You have an internal body. So bhakti should be performed situated in knowledge that I am not matter, I am spirit. As well as sadhaka deha, putting on tilak, keeping clean, paying obeisances, doing practical service. So both must be there. Therefore, acharyas have written so much clear purports for us. Sadhu Sangha Srila Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita ki jai.